hang up and try again.
Welcome to my channel. So I'm going to be doing Wacky Wednesdays. So I'm going to be uploading every Wednesday. And right now it is a Wednesday. Wow. Imagine that, Wednesdays. I like Wednesdays. Wednesday's a good day. So stay tuned for Wacky Wednesdays. Yep, cool. So currently we're on the second week of lockdown. So we've done 2 weeks and we've got 2 weeks to go. Hopefully we won't extend anymore. It's all going well so far. The first while of the lockdown I was like upset and I was depressed and I was like, oh my gosh, like this is a big change, like I can't do this like most things in my life. But recently I've started to realize like I've got to get into a routine, and I've started getting up at the same time and I'm going to do my next video on how I deal with the lockdown. But today is a big topic for me. I've never actually spoken to anybody about this. I've never not many people know of what actually is going on in my life, or like how being on the spectrum, high functioning with aspergers, or if you want to say autism, they kind of interlock, but I'm aspergers, and a lot of people can confuse that with autism because it is very similar, if not same kind of concept. But as I was growing up, everybody assumed I had ADHD, and I went along with that. I'm like, yep, I have ADHD, you know, because I don't really want to let people know that, or tell people that actually in fact I am on the spectrum, I am high functioning, which is it is easier obviously than, not easier in a way, but like it is different to being having a full like autism where you can't do a lot of things, well, Asperger's, where you're restricted to not being able to function, because being high functioning means that it's hard for you to get a diagnosis. People don't believe that you are on the spectrum, and people expect you to be able to do things like a normal person. However, social and other kind of interactions are just as hard for somebody high functioning as they are for somebody that is on the lower, that is less functioning or is non-functioning at all. And I personally have had my own experience, my own journey with this big ball that we call high functioning Asperger's. So recently, so it used to be very hard for somebody with Asperger's that was high functioning to get a diagnosis. They would be confused mainly for having ADHD, you know, a different kind of disorder. Maybe you're in later life, if it's not diagnosed earlier, you'd be like that you're OCD. Even in some girls, it's been confused for anorexia, other things, because there are a lot of patterns to a high, especially as a female, to a high functioning person with autism. And it wasn't until 2013 when they basically they expanded that spectrum and just went from saying, like, looking at like having a person that is fully fully has Asperger's, to them being a spectrum, and there being like, you could be at this end or this end of the spectrum, but it means you still have the same struggles. Sorry, it's really hard for me to explain, but anyway. So for me personally, I'm just going to start with my story, because I feel like that's the best way to then explain to you how this works, as I get a bit frazzled with this sometimes. So as a young child, I didn't speak till about the age of 4. My parents thought there was something wrong with me because I didn't speak, and like they thought I might never speak. But that is a very early symptom of somebody that could be presenting with high functioning Asperger's. They might not speak till later in life, but when they do, they will make up for it, as everybody that knows me knows that I did make up for that. I do have this little book that just has some notes, just because this is a bit, you know, a big thing for me to discuss. So as a kid, I never really felt like I fit in. Like, I just kind of brushed it over. I was like, it's cool, like, you know, I didn't realize that people just really didn't like me in a way, just because I didn't have that understanding of social interactions. My mum, when I was young age, was quite worried about me, and he used to take me to some psychologists, would talk about it and would see, and a lot of people would think I had ADHD, which, yeah, mildly I do, but they kind of, the thing is, they present the same, and a lot of a lot of psychologists, especially in young females that have high functioning aspergers, they are misdiagnosed because don't show the classic symptoms of it. So yeah, I struggled with social interactions, and also I have a lot of difficulty with give and take conversations. So as I got older, it became more apparent to me that I didn't know how to, well, socialize with people. I would talk a lot, and then they wouldn't be interested. I'll be like, why aren't they interested in my life? Like, I don't understand. I had no grasp of a filter or like how to socially present myself, and that did lead to a lot of anxiety and a lot of depression, which is a big factor for people on the spectrum, because they think they're never going to be able to fit in. They don't know how to fit in. They don't know how to say that. They don't know why people don't like them. And that was a big thing for me. I didn't know why people didn't like me. I didn't feel like I had done anything wrong. I didn't feel like I thought they were my friends. But a lot of people will say to have Asperger's, you must be not want to socialize, you must like sit alone, and you'll be like a kind of like a geek. That's kind of how they, like, I don't want to be like offensive or anything, but that's a lot of the way that they thought people with Asperger's were. That's why people like myself, who want to be social, I want to have friends, I want to make people like me, but I lack that social skill to do so. It is a lot harder to diagnose somebody like that, because if you just observed me in everyday life, you would be like, oh, she's trying to socialize, she's good, she's just probably got ADHD, she doesn't know how to socialize, you know, blah, blah. But you actually have to talk to me and realize that actually I am struggling so much, and I just want to fit in. And that's a big thing about me, is I've always wanted to fit in. Other things people would notice about me, well, this is some things I have, some things I don't have, as part of the study that I've been doing on the topic. Certain things that I do have is I have not restricted, it's like hard to say. So they say restricted interest is part of being on the spectrum, but for me that meant that whatever I did very, 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 I was dedicated to that. And that is a big thing about people with Asperger's, is they will have distinct strengths. Like me growing up, I do a video on like what I did growing up to manage, because I needed a routine. So I was a competitive figure skater for 8 years, and I was committed to doing that, because that gave me a sense of being able to do something. And for me, because I can't rely heavily on relationships and friendships, because I find it very, very hard and very draining for me to do that, I like to focus on other things, such as at the moment I'm focusing on yoga, and I like to travel, and I like to focus on like different foods and different like photography or stuff that I'm starting to work on in this YouTube, which does then help me to use my energy that I would trying to socialize with other people on better things. And I'm going to make a video about that in the future. Another strength for people such as myself is good memory. I've always had good memory. Ever since a young age, I've just always remembered things. Like, I can, like, directions. I could drive around most of Auckland with my eyes closed, and people are like, that's random. Or like, I could, like, with things, I'll just like read it and then I'll remember it, or somebody will say something and I'll remember it. a very because we're very detail oriented, and we a lot of people would say that people high functioning on the spectrum like have a higher intelligence than people not. I'm not saying that's true, but it is in some areas. I feel like we do have advantages, and they and stuff like that. I feel like strengths are good to realize with people like me. We're very good at focusing and being persistent. So once I want to do something, if I want to do something, that's all I want to do. And that's the same thing. If I like, I'm in a relationship with somebody, I'll be like, that's all I want to do. Like, I just want to focus on that. And that can be a downfall, and that can be a strength. I want to just focus on this. Whatever I'm doing at that time is what I want to focus on. That can mean that I can sit for hours on end and forget about time doing a certain thing. I might be researching yoga. I might be reading a book. 2-3 hours go by, I've missed something that I'm supposed to do because I'm so focused on that. So, and then we're going to go into some difficulties, big things that, especially for me in my life, that I've realized. So, hypersensitive. So, people like me can be hypersensitive to things like light, noise, and a lot of things like that. Like, sometimes I have problems with light and like sensory issues, a sensory overload. If I'm in I worked at Walt Disney World, for example, and there was a lot of bangs and like people talking and a lot of lights and like just a lot of things going on. So I got a massive sensory overload. Like, I can hear things like if something's too loud, I just feel that in my body, and it irritates me because small things can irritate people with disorders such as this, like a loud noise, and it will shake me, and I'll feel like that can like rattle my mood. Like, normal people hear a loud noise like, oh, that's loud, but for me sometimes that can rattle my whole mood. So working at Disney World was a real challenge for me with that sensory overload. And I talked a little bit earlier about the difficulty with give and take conversations, but more so for me, that is the biggest issue that I've always had with everyday life. So I have a circle of people that I hang out with. I wouldn't call them all friends. Some of them in the group are friends, and some of them hate me. Well, not hate me, some of them dislike me because I talk too much. I don't know how to listen. I say too much about myself. And the thing is, with me, I'm a very, very nice person. Like, if you're one of my good friends, like, I'm a caring person. I'm very good with the friends that I do have. But you have to get over that initial hurdle of she just doesn't understand when to not talk and when to listen. And a lot of people can't get over that fact, and will lead to them not liking me. And that was a really hard thing for me to deal with growing up. Like, I had no idea that people didn't want to listen to me. I had no idea that people thought, like, until I think I was like intermediate when I first started realizing that people didn't like having conversations with me, but I didn't know why. And it really started to hurt. That's when I started to get quite anxious and quite depressed, because I started realizing that no matter what I did, no matter how I presented myself, people were still going to not like me. If I was quiet, people would be, why are you quiet? Are you just trying to fit in? If I was too loud, people would tell me to shut up. It just was never ending. And I tried to have a conversation with people. I tried to be nice to people, and they would laugh at me. They would make me feel like I wasn't important. I would feel like what I said didn't matter. So, but I didn't know why. And that's the big thing, is lacking a filter. Lacking knowing what to say, when to say it, and how to say it, and who to say it to. So in later life, that came to me not knowing people, and then they'd show some little bit of interest in me. So I'm like, oh my god, somebody likes me. Tell them your whole life story. Oh my god, they want to hear everything about you. Oh my gosh, like, they're in love with you. And then like that meant that I would get very, very hurt very quickly. I'd get into relationships fast. I can get into friendships very fast. I'll think that people are trustworthy and that they have good intentions, but they don't. using you for something they want to, and that means that I, over my time, have fallen into relationships, mainly relationships. For me, I'm a very relationship orientated person, for anybody that knows me. So I would very quickly fall into a relationship that turned out that that person was showing me some sort of interest. It might even not be great interest. It might have been like, it might have been bad interest. It might have been detrimental to my health or my well-being, but because they showed that interest, I still want to be with them, which ended me in some bad relationships and a lot of heartbreak very early in my life. And it all comes back to not being able to realize what people's intentions. And that's one big thing for me. A lot of people with, even with high functioning autism, Asperger's, or any kind of Asperger's, don't understand sarcasm, don't understand jokes. But with me, I do. I'm very good with jokes. I'm very good with sarcasm. It's one of my biggest things that I use. So that can confuse people and be like, you can't be on the spectrum because you understand jokes. You understand, but that's just one thing that luckily I am able to do, and a lot of people aren't, and I do take that for granted. But I realize that is a big thing that helps me get through a lot of situations. Like, if I didn't understand that sarcasm and stuff, I think that would get me into even more trouble. Like, when people are sarcastic, I can then be like, oh, they don't like me, or like they don't want to be in this conversation with me if they're like saying something in a sarcastic, mean way. I do understand that. So 99% of the time, which means I can withdraw myself from a situation. So that is another positive with me. Not everybody's Asperger's. Okay, another thing, until I don't want to go off into a rant about that too much, is the difficulty with non-verbal conversation skills. So like distance, so I might stand too close to somebody and they might feel like their bubble was broken, and I might just speak very close to somebody's face. Or loudness. I'm a very loud person. If anybody knows me, I don't have an inside voice. I don't know when to talk quietly. I don't know, and for me, I actually can't hear myself when I talk. So like right now, I might think I'm talking at like a normal level, but I'm obviously probably talking louder. But when people I know when I'm around, they'll be like, Nicole, you're talking a bit louder, and then I can tone my voice down. And then, see, it's just the way in which somebody addresses somebody with being on the spectrum, which I'll come to later. So yeah, I just don't quite pick up on those non-verbal things. Like, I like, sometimes eye contact can either be, I can either keep eye contact for a very long time, or I'm not good with eye contact. There's just a lot of things around conversations. Oh, and fiddling, like I'm doing now. Like, I do that too. Like, in every conversation, I just like fiddle, and it like keeps me like, I feel more secure, I guess, for myself. Something that I was saying earlier, I started to touch on extreme emotions. So extreme emotions is a big one for me in particular. It's one of the biggest symptoms that I have of this. And it comes back to like when I said that when people tell me to be quiet, if somebody shouts at me and tells me, be quiet, like I will instantly feel attacked, and I will probably start crying, because that's just my response to a situation. As I've got older, I've got better. But at any kind of conflict, if somebody's mad at me, somebody's angry at me, I feel like I've disappointed somebody, I will instantly start crying. And it's not because of them. It's like I'll be in a work meeting with a boss, and it's not even, it's a confronting situation. I feel like I've done something wrong because it's not even that confronting. I just feel like I've done something wrong, and I will start crying. And that's just because that's the way I am. That's the way I'm a very emotional person. I just burst into tears. I don't like conflict. If people want to address somebody with a disorder such as Asperger's, just be nice, be kind, be caring. Just be like, hey, you're being a bit loud, and you know what? I'll probably know that I'm being loud. Like, I'll probably be like, oh right, I forgot. Like, I do talk loudly sometimes. I'll be quiet, I'm sorry. But if you come at me and be like, why are you being loud? Like, just shut up. Then I'm gonna feel attacked, and that's not the way to approach somebody on the spectrum. As well as severe emotional with getting sad, I get very angry very quickly. Something annoys me, I'll be like angry, just instantly react in an angry tone, in an angry manner, because I don't associate thinking before acting, which is a very hard thing. So instantly angry, or I'll instantly worry, like I dropped my card, I can't find it, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, it's just literally sitting right behind me, like, or like any kind of emotion that you can think, it's just exaggerated with somebody with on the spectrum. So that is something that if you do have friends that are on the spectrum, or you're in a relationship with somebody on the spectrum, is to realize that emotion comes before, a lot of the time comes before rationalization, and then once they have some time to think about it and come clear with the situation, the emotions lessen. But that initial reaction can be quite confronting or detrimental to some people, and is one of the reasons that a lot of my relationships and friendships have been an issue. Like, if somebody isn't replying to me, like for a long period of time, when they open my message and then they don't reply for a long period of time, I automatically think that they have lost interest in me, they don't want to talk to me, I freak out, I have get really bad anxiety, which leads to me thinking that people don't want to talk to me. And that does come with the trauma in the past, childhood trauma and teenage years of people not wanting to talk to me and not wanting to be in a social interaction with me. So that makes my relationships and friendships very, very hard, because I have that underlying feeling that people just don't want to socialize with me. I need somebody that understands that, and understands that I am going to get anxious, I'm going to get upset if something happens when they're not talking to me, or like they can't just get angry at me and like storm off, because I'm automatically left there going, oh my god, what did I do wrong? That's the one thing that I always resort back to, is what did I do wrong? Because I know I did something wrong, but I don't know what that is, and it's hard pinpointing exactly what you do wrong. And with aspergers is the hardest. I know I'm going to come and touch a little bit on the diet issues right now, but I'm going to do a whole separate video for that, because that was a big thing for me when I did at one point in my life maybe have anorexia. I don't know, but that can be a big thing for especially females on the spectrum, is because we have issues with, like, we don't like certain foods, like the texture or the taste, and we'll just really not like them, and that can come off as a eating disorder, or we're very picky eaters. And yeah, I'm not so much of a picky eater, but some things I am pickier about, and that can be seen. But it can also lead to coming across like we don't want to eat, or all that kind of stuff. And a lot of people have been misdiagnosed with anorexia who also are on the spectrum but don't know it, and I'm going to go into further detail with that in a later video. But yeah, for me personally, I do have a little bit of a quirky eating habits, and for anybody that knows me, I'm very direct and literal. I take most things literally. Like, I can understand sarcasm and I understand jokes, but if I don't think it is that, I will take it literally. And I'm very direct. I will tell you straight up. If I don't like your dress is ugly. Some girls will be like, oh, you look so good. But like, if your friend doesn't look good in a dress, I'm going to tell her she doesn't look good in a dress. That's just how I am. If I have a problem, I will tell you about it. Most girls nowadays will be like, I don't have a problem. But me, I'll just be like, hey, you did this annoyed me, and this is why it annoyed me. And that is both a blessing and a curse. I did touch on this earlier, but yeah, choosing to be with somebody or in a friendship because they give you certain attention in any kind of way, negative or positive, is very detrimental, as I said earlier. There are a lot of intertwining factors with having a high functioning spectrum disorder, and I find it no easier. I find everyday life very, very hard. It is very exhausting, and it is very mentally draining. I'm going to probably do a whole video on how mentally draining and how exhausting being on the spectrum can be. And the last thing I do want to touch on, just a slight amount, but I will also be making there's going to be a series on this, so I'm just kind of touching on small topics today is messiness and untidiness and the clutter in my brain. So I'm a very messy person. Like, I got a messy room because I don't know how to organize things. I don't know where to put something. I'll look at something, I'm like, where can I put this? I don't know how to organize this. I don't know if I'm going to find it. If I put it away somewhere, am I going to find it? Am I going to put it in the wrong place? So everything kind of just goes on the ground or on the dresser because then I know where it is, right? The thing is with me, I'll put something down somewhere and I'll know I put that down there. That's where I put it. And then somebody will move it. I'm like, oh my gosh, where did they move it to? But they've just put it away. I just like to put things somewhere in the open, and like, that's why messiness is a big thing. Like, I'm messy because I just don't know how to organize things. But I'm gonna make a whole video about that. So as my figure skating coach, I was talking to my mum the other day, and she said about this because I was talking about how I'm gonna start doing videos of this, and she said it's kind of like how your figure skating coach told us that one morning how your brain works. So imagine your brain is a massive filing cabinet, A to Z, you know, and once you learn a skill, like, maybe you learn a skill called, like, say you learn about zucchinis, I don't know. So the information about a zucchini, once you've learned it, will go into the filing cabinet under Z, and then when you go to, maybe you want to know something about a zucchini, you go to your brain and you go to filing cabinet Z, and you look and you find zucchini and you read that file. With somebody like me, she said, you learn that skill, you retain that skill, but you file in the wrong section. So maybe zucchini is going to be under C, and you're like, when you go to Z, you can't find zucchini, and then you freak out. You're like, oh my gosh, where is zucchini? And then you look and you look and you look, and then you find zucchini in C, right? And that's where it is. And that's just an analogy that I've been thinking about. It is very, very true for me. Anyway, this is quite a long video already, so I just want to round up by saying, I hope if you have these issues, if you're already diagnosed on the spectrum, like I am, or you think you might be, and you're older as an adult and you're thinking you want to look into that more, do it. Because honestly, I've found some coping habits, which is going to be a big part of this channel, is my coping mechanisms and how I use my passions, my talents, and the things that I love to overcome this hurdle and turn it into an even bigger blessing. So I just want to say, this is the first video in my new series on my channel. The aim for my channel is to show everybody that even though I have those restraints and those big social issues, that I want to use those to inspire younger people and inspire them to do their best, find their passions, find a routine, find something that suits them, and then they can use that to become a better person. For me, I want to use I'm using my yoga. I'm going to be using this YouTube channel. I'm going to be using, by the end of next year, I want to be full-time traveling and using online sources and resources to fund my full-time traveling and go around the world and share how being different, being unique can be a blessing, and how I'm going to mainly use, I'm starting to practice yoga to clear my mind, help control the way I am, and help, I feel like that's going to be able to let me take a step back from my life and realize that I can control my own mind. And that's where I'm trying to work towards, controlling my own mind to show the world that even though I have this restraint, it's not who I am. My goal is to travel the world in search of happiness, in search of a spiritual enlightenment and a spiritual awakening that can only come from being a pure and loving person. And honestly, I want to make sure that young girls and boys like me that are on the spectrum feel like they are worthy, they are good people, because we are good people. We just need to find passions and put all of our energy into our passions instead of wrongful relationships and wrongful friendships. And that is where this video is going to come to an end, and the further chapters I'm gonna explain where I'm gonna travel, how I'm gonna travel, my yoga passions, more about my aspergers, and also some lockdown and routine things that I've done in my childhood that have helped me to become the person I am today. And if you made it all the way to the end, thank you for listening. It means a lot to me. My link for my Instagram and my Facebook page are going to be in the comments, along with some of the things that I've talked about here. And it would be really mean a lot if you give my Facebook and Instagram a like, because I'm working on my photography and I'm working on my content to help myself. As well as hit the subscribe button, hit that notification button, so you can get notified every time I post. It's going to be on a Wednesday, and it's going to be New Zealand time. So I believe that is plus, we just had daylight saving. It's like 12 East, what is it, Pacific, whatever standard time it is in New Zealand, which is like the day ahead of America. I don't know when that is, but anyway, that's it. That's all I had to say. Remember, be your own kind of weird.